Everybody Hates Rand is a Wheel of Time podcast that will contain spoilers for all 14 books. So if you're anti-spoiler, pause this, read all 14 books, and come back. We'll be here, waiting.
Our title is a joke and is meant to be taken as such. In the context of this podcast, everybody refers to us and our cat. You are free to feel however you want about Rand, who is a fictional character. Don't DM us.
The world is a mess, Dark One stretching out his hand. The dragon's reborn, the fire's been fanned, but everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand.
Yeah.
Okay, I have no idea where a cold open was, or if there was one in that introduction.
Yeah, sorry, not very funny, haha.
But this is Everybody Hates Rand.
Tybalt is back again.
Tybalt's back.
Guess who's back?
Backstreet's back. Alright.
Do.
We're your friendly neighborhood Wheelie Time podcast. I'm Emily Jushaw.
I am Sally Goodger.
Did I tell you I found the introduction that I deleted? It was in the paper reel. Like, in the middle of some. It was very clear that we were talking about something, and I just sort of threw it in there to make sure that it got put in, and it didn't, because I just deleted that whole section, so that's where we're at. Hey, Crown of Swords. Hey, Matt Cathon.
Hey, Crown of Swords is correct.
Oh my god, I can't focus either, so it's like just a thing that's going around. Okay.
It's catching.
Yeah, like a yawn. Okay, these are two chapters set in Abu Dar. The first one is called A Touch on the Cheek and refers to the fact that Tylan touches Matt on the cheek, and more thematically refers to the fact that this is Matt's first meeting with Tylan and indicative of their interactions to come, which involve a lot of Tylan touching Matt without his consent. The second chapter is called...
Second chapter has quite a few point of views.
Yeah, the second chapter does have quite a few points of view. It's called The Triumph of Logic. And I don't... it seems to refer to the argument that the two Aes Sedai, Jolene and Teslin, are having about their place in Abu Dar.
Don't two other Black Aja sisters argue?
They, yes, and one of them also is making a logical point, and the other one isn't.
Hers is about, like, let's kidnap people.
Yeah, let's kidnap Nynaeve and Elaine, da-da-da-da-da. But, we'll get to that.
Yeah. There's just too many Aes Sedai in these two chapters.
There are too many people who can channel generally in the Wheelie Time, and that's just, like, an ongoing complaint. Just too many people who can channel who we have to keep track of. It is okay to have red shirt people who can channel Robert Jordan. That's fine.
Yeah, they don't need to be named.
Like, even the fact that we are introduced in this chapter not just to Jolene and Teslin, but to two additional rebel Aes Sedai who just were at the Abu Dari Palace before Nynaeve and Elaine's coterie got here. Whack.
Yeah.
So this chapter opens with Matt going to the Terrasin Palace. Matt, like a good team member, friend, is trying to warn Nynaeve and Elaine of the fact that there are dark friends in the city and that they are associating with a very powerful man, Caradin, who is referred to as the White Cloak ambassador to Tylan's court, which is interesting because...
The Ku Klux Klan ambassador to the White House.
I mean, exactly. Usually the president, you mean.
Yeah, okay, good point. You got me there.
The White House is almost entirely made of ambassadors from the Ku Klux Klan. So, bad example. This is a little weird because in most of the cities and power structures that we've seen, there hasn't been anything as formal as embassies. Mm-hmm. You would think that that in this continent that has a wide spread of interconnected countries that are all engaged, we can assume, in both trade and warfare in some instances, that there would be official embassies and ambassadors, but that is not something Robert Jordan has engaged in heretofore, possibly because he's not interested in it. I don't know, possibly because it's a huge world and he doesn't have time to get into it.
Yeah.
I do think a different series that handled conflicts differently would talk more about ambassadors and diplomacy generally.
Yeah.
But this is a very war-focused.
Yeah, it's so interesting now that you point that out. That there's no, like, ambassador is not an official thing. Like, the way it has been for centuries.
Yeah, like, you would think at least that when Elaine gets into power, she'd have to be dealing with ambassadors from Tyr and Kyrian and the Borderlands or whatever, but that's not necessarily something that happens.
Yeah, it's like people who are quote-unquote ambassadors just are always sort of staying at the palace.
Yeah, just, like, hanging out.
And they sort of there.
Yeah, they just sort of come and go as they please. It's not like an assignment, you know?
I'm very interested by that.
I don't know. A lot of my favorite fantasy series, I probably am bringing it up because there are ambassador characters, and that is a major facet of the world building.
Yeah.
When it comes to international relations.
You're so right, though, bestie. There are no international relations in Wheelie Time. It is just warfare and bigotry.
And conquest.
And conquest. Yes. Why would you have an ambassador from a country you are going to colonize and conquest?
Yeah, it's just particularly interesting because here we're seeing, here are multiple ambassador characters. You know, the Aes Sedai themselves are kind of meant to be ambassador characters. Hanging out at the Terrasen Palace with Tylan when it is well known that there is no actual, like, countrywide coalescence within, what's this? Altara. What's this country called? Altara. You know, so, like, what's the point of having an ambassador there almost?
Yeah, I also find it deeply weird and interesting that in Ebudar they keep saying that, like, Tylan's power only extends 2 or 3 days' ride outside the city. Mm-hmm. It's just like, this is a queen who barely controls anything.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just trying to set up kind of the, like, not futility, because the Shanshan conquests are always very effective, but the idea that when the Shanshan take over Ebudar, they are not taking over Altara, which sort of lends itself to these long, sweeping plots, mostly involving Matt for the books after the Shanshan invasion, where it's like, there's guerrilla warfare still happening in Altara.
Yeah.
The country doesn't get taken over just because the queen surrendered, more or less. Anyway, back to the original point, which is that Matt is like, I gotta go tell Nynaeve and Elaine. He also has some other purposes. He wants to talk to Nynaeve and Elaine generally and be like, could we please, you know, come up with a game plan?
Yeah.
Can we actually work together? Can you not go herring off into dangerous situations without bodyguards? Which we've already said we're Team Matt on this. It's not particularly condescending to ask other people if they need bodyguards.
Yeah.
When they're going into very dangerous neighborhoods. Whatever. Matt has this pretty comedic sequence where he trots up to, you know, one of the ornamental guards in front of the palace and is like, I need to give this message to Nynaeve and Aes Sedai. He's very formal.
Yeah, it's very cute.
He's just like, I am going to be as direct as possible. Get in and out. The guard obviously doesn't know what to make of him, but brings him in, finds someone else to hand him off to, and Matt then suffers being handed off between servants, like, on 7 different occasions.
Yeah.
And he finally is like, what the fuck?
Yeah, can I please get a waffle?
Can I please get a waffle? It's hard to say why this happens. Yeah. I mean, it's comedic, given.
Yeah.
But it's like, is there... I don't understand it. Usually if something like this is happening, and I 100% believe it would happen, that just a bunch of servants are like, I don't want to deal with this guy, so it's like this game of handing him off to someone else. But, like, usually that happens if there is just so much bureaucracy in place within a setting that simply no one can be trusted to take responsibility for anything, you know? Yeah. They're always trying to pass it off to someone else.
Yeah, pass the buck.
That doesn't necessarily seem to be the case in the Terrasen Palace, which, as we learn later, in Matt's later experiences, are very much, like, Tylan is spearheading the efforts of all the servants. Mm-hmm. When Matt is eventually corralled into the palace and sort of forced into these positions he doesn't want to be in, it is it is because it seems like all the servants have risen up in a combined effort to maneuver him where Tylan wants him to go.
Yeah, seems very efficient.
Yeah.
Servantry.
So that doesn't quite make sense, but it does also make sense that Robert Jordan is already introducing us to the idea that this is a place where Matt does not have allies.
Yeah.
Matt usually gets along pretty well with servants and stuff like that, but here he's just being sort of like, he's led into this really confusing situation that seems not to have an end point or a purpose to it. And that's sort of indicative of his entire time in the Terracin Palace. It's just this, like, labyrinth that he fully does not understand what's going on, why things are happening. And probably more thematically in Robert Jordan's view, it's this, like, reversal of roles. Robert Jordan sets up the assault of Matt by Tylan to be this outrageous thing because Tylan is coming on to Matt, a woman coming on to a man. Obviously, we are educated readers who are not writing a fantasy novel in the 1990s. We know that it's rape. Women can rape men. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is supposed to confuse Matt as much as it does because she's a woman coming on to him. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't know, it's just sort of like setting up these vibes.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Like, yes, it is a very funny scene. And I find it all the more funny because in Matt's narration, he remembers everybody's name. And it's like, I would not remember that many people's name at that point. But he's like, this is Merrick, and this is what he said, and this is Laren.
And this is what he looks like.
It just, like, keeps going. It's very funny, but it is also kind of form-mimicking content. You know, we just get this, like, iteration of people. And he's just, like a Scooby-Doo sequence going all around
back
the palace.
And forth. Yeah, he has no idea where he is at any given moment.
It's like in a warren. There's no idea what's going on.
He has one of his famous lines here about how displays of wealth always make him more comfortable.
Yeah. Which is, I'm like, yeah, he's always, because he's like, he says, where there's wealth, some of it will usually stick to my fingers.
Yeah, he's like, if it's a rich place, then I could probably get some of it.
Fucking idiot.
But also, I just sort of like it.
Yeah. Like,
which is such a fascinating little...
I like being...
We've talked about Matt already as the god of wealth,
yeah,
but...
he's like, I myself am a disgusting, dirty mongrel boy.
Dirty rowdy boy, Macathon.
But I love being around pretty rich things.
Yes. Opulence.
Yeah. But it definitely adds to his confusion and distress and the fact that he is rendered powerless in this place.
Yeah.
And we also have his dice are rolling really heavily in his head, which is one of, I think, the most fascinating parts of Matt's character is we have this, like, I hope they do something really cool with it in the show as, like, a sound.
Yes, like an audible thing that when we're in Matt's point of view, we
hear dice rolling. Yeah, because it makes it... Like, I don't know if the phrase leitmotif specifically refers to music, so it specifically works in, like, visual media. Like, a leitmotif is a certain sound coming. Yeah. So, like, in Lord of the Rings, you have the Fellowship theme that plays when they're all together at Rivendell, you know, and it'll play at certain themes to kind of certain moments to tie the Fellowship together. So I hope they do something really neat with the sound to make it be like, this is a leitmotif, you know, some serious shit is going to happen with Matt. But yeah, his dice are also rolling, so just like the whole thing just kind of is both comedic and sets you on edge a little bit, especially when the Scooby-Doo sequence ends and he's in the middle of like 6 different Aes Sedai and they're physically pulling on him.
Yeah. Which we've had mention of the dice rolling before, like Matt has referred to that sort of casually in the past, but this is his first real, like, at all long self-reflection about it. And he talks about how, he has another really great line where he's like, I don't really know what causes the dice to roll or what they are meant to indicate, except that it always seems to be that I could die at the end of it in some spectacular fashion, he says. So he is understandably, like, leery of them and is particularly noting these ones for being super loud, I guess. So he's like, something big is happening. Mm-hmm. And I actually don't recall, do the dice stop?
The dice do not stop
in this section?
In these two chapters. Yeah, they keep going.
Okay.
Which is unfortunate, because this is Matt Cathon's terrible, very horrible, extremely no good, very bad day.
Matt Cathon's terrible, horrible, no good, very bad 11 days, if the Wikipedia about the length of Crown of Swords is to be believed.
Okay.
And yeah, so we don't know if these dice rolling is meant to indicate the eventual stopping of the dice at the end of Matt's points of views in this book. There's that infamous moment where the building falls on him, the dice stop, or if that will be a continuation. Something stops, another starts. Da-da-da-da-da. But that's going on. Matt finally stops the servant who is escorting him currently and is like, could I please get a waffle? What's it gonna take, huh? And she's like, starts to say something to him, I guess, when one of the Aes Sedai, Teslin, I believe, sort of says something from behind him.
Yeah, fucking creep.
Creep. Matt turns around with a smile on his face. Forces a smile and is like, how do you do, ladies? He's like, I'm not all that concerned about Aes Sedai, except I really am. They're very scary.
They're super scary, but I pretend that I'm a brave little toaster.
Hackathon, brave little toaster with my little fox medallion that protects me from most channeling. Not all, though. He doesn't, I think, immediately recognize these two, but he knows that there are multiple Aes Sedai in the palace who he has not met. So as he's kind of talking to them, he realizes, these are Aleda's two Aes Sedai. We have Teslin and Jolene. Jolene is very young. Actually, neither of them is very young in terms of Aes Sedai years. Like dog years.
How many Aes Sedai years is one human year?
He's like, oh shit, these are Aleda's Aes Sedai. They are Jolene and Teslin. This is sort of going into Jolene's point of view that we get in the next chapter. Jolene and Teslin are both older than Aleda, who herself is a fairly old Aes Sedai. I mean, she is older than Moiraine, so if we have, like, the ranking of Egg, Elaine, and Nynaeve are the youngest, and then we had, like, Moiraine and Swan and the generation above them. Mm-hmm. Above them, it's Aleda, and then we have fucking Jolene and Teslin.
Yeah.
Jolene's like, Teslin was one of my teachers in the White Tower, but I was one of Aleda's teachers in the White Tower. It's very confusing.
Yeah.
All these women just are living hundreds of years, it feels like.
Yeah. It also is just so trippy, also in terms of the hierarchy, that they keep saying that, like, power is the only thing that indicates hierarchy, except then they start throwing around age like this, and I'm like, what is the truth?
Yeah.
Who is in charge?
Well, the power hierarchy leads to some interesting interaction that Matt doesn't fully understand in a minute here, but Jolene appears to be a youngish woman. She's very pretty. Teslin herself is not very pretty. She's very imperious and...
Matt says it looks like she eats brambles.
Yes.
Which
So
is
she's
so
very
rude.
mean looking. It's a very, like, Dickensian old
Miss
Havisham description. Yeah. Which is very funny because Matt will interact with Jolene and Teslin for the foreseeable future. And he sort of ends with a very amiable relationship with Teslin, which I find interesting. In that she, more than the other Aes Sedai, comes to respect him a little more. And he then is able to respect her in turn.
Yeah.
All Matt is ever asking is for, like, a modicum of respect, and then he'll be a good boy.
R-E-S-P-E-C-T.
Jolene and Teslin start badgering him about how they want to drag him back to the White Tower. He's just like, When more Aes Sedai show up, Vandene or Adelius, he does not know the difference, which is hilarious because he's like, I'm sure it's Vandene. Yeah. And then it's Adelius at the end, and he's like, damn it.
Like, they just need to wear fucking name tags or, like,
Dang
little
it.
Colored hair ribbons.
Yeah, they need to be color-coded.
Like little twins.
The Powerpuff Girls or something.
Vandene and Adelius, Powerpuff Girls.
Yeah, he's like, these are like the twins in The Shining, for God's sake. But Vandene / Adelius, as we find out, like, grabs Matt's coat violently and sort of yanks him away, and then Teslin grabs his coat and yanks him in the other way, so he's literally sort of suspended between these two women, and we can imagine it's a pretty funny visual, because Matt is taller than most women, so he's just sort of, hello? And he keeps trying to interrupt to be like, can I please get a waffle? Yeah. This is just the Matt Cathon, can I please get a waffle?
Please.
He's like, please, my coat. You're gonna rip my coat.
Yeah.
I don't actually care about that, but please.
Please don't. He also Matt in these chapters is pulling his charm out to the best of his ability.
Yeah.
Like, he has some hilarious lines, like, there's enough of me to go around.
There's enough of me to go around, ladies, and they're all like,
which pisses them all off, and I think is hilarious.
I know, I would have cracked
I
up.
would have been like, haha, Matt, you're so funny. You can have your coat back. Yeah, and so, like, it is another one of those, like, both funny and also really distressing visuals, because it just adds to this litany of women in particular touching Matt without his consent and handling him in some really inappropriate ways. Like, I understand the situation is pretty dire. Like, if Jolene and Teslin were to take Matt back to the White Tower, like, that would be bad news bears. But, like, Adelius, there's no reason to, like, grab him.
I think we're, like, allowed to think of this as a comedic situation because we know nothing comes of it.
Yeah.
Like, it would be very different if, you know, Jolene and Teslin actually did kidnap Matt.
Yeah.
In the same way, I think, if we're being totally fair, Tylan's forwardness to Matt, we would be able, in this chapter specifically, we would be able to write off as funny if nothing more came of it.
Yeah.
It's still not great behavior, but it is ultimately, you know, kind of funny. Matt's general surprise, the idea that when he turns around, he accidentally touches Tylan's boob because she's right there, and then he's like, huh.
He's like, I'm going to pass away.
Yeah, and it's like a fainting goat
Yeah.
about to keel over, you know?
Yeah.
Just so shocked by everything going on.
Yeah, I could find the Tylan scene funny, except for when she starts touching his face.
Oh yeah, I hate that.
That is when it becomes... Because, like... Yeah, like, I still... Like, still, there's always, like, you obviously should not continue to flirt with someone who is physically uncomfortable, the way Matt obviously is. But, like, yeah, there are some, like, funnier moments where Beslin is like, you should find yourself a pretty little man for the ball, and she, like, looks at Matt.
And Matt's like,
Matt's like, again, I will be passing away. Like, those could be played off as funny, yeah, but they only, escalate, and Robert Jordan has a really bad habit of playing assault off as a joke.
Oh,
He
yeah.
does it not only with Matt, but with a lot of other people.
the Barrelane Perrin situation is
Yes.
meant to be funny.
Yes.
Rand thinking his first time with Min is rape is sort of supposed to be
supposed
funny.
to be a joke.
A lot of things that are just, you know, this is sort of Wheel of Time subtitle Rape Jokes, the series. It
Yeah.
sure feels like sometimes.
Yeah, no, it really does. Like, Robert Jordan is walking a really bad line there. But not quite to Tylan yet. Yes, like, it can be, the coat scene is still pretty amusing to me because, yeah, Matt does not end up getting kidnapped. He also still is, like, a little bit in, like, he has a little bit more agency because he's not being physically cornered against a desk. He's able to, like, kind of shrug out of his coat and talk and be heard.
And ultimately, we know, I think, that this is a situation where if worst came to worst, Matt could fight his way out.
Yes.
The sort of latent threat of Tylan, which Matt tells us explicitly, is that he cannot fight back physically. Yeah. She's a queen, for one thing, and he is in her country.
Yeah.
As opposed to, like, if he fought back against Aes Sedai who were trying to kidnap him, he has a bunch of other Aes Sedai who would theoretically back him up.
Yeah.
He's not breaking any laws there.
Yeah.
And also just there are a lot of social things in place that make fighting against a woman who cannot channel a lot different than fighting against a woman who can channel.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So there's this comedic back and forth Aes Sedai scene where we're getting the undercurrents of what is going on in the Terrasin Palace between Aleda's two-person embassy and the much larger Salidar group. The two Aes Sedai we're introduced to here, besides Adelius, are Marilil, who was sort of in charge. She, again, is older than, I think, both Teslin and Jolene. But she is lower in the power. So when Teslin and Jolene are sort of aggressive to her, her automatic response is to back down, even though it's like this weird thing. Aes Sedai aren't usually, like, butting heads like this. Mm-hmm. Marilil, you know, like, might be the highest in the power ranking within her specific group.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I'm in charge here, but how do I react against, you know, is it all under the rug? So that's going on. Matt, of course, has no clue about any of it.
Yeah.
But they're all just going back and forth, the usual, you're a traitor,
Yeah.
da-da-da-da-da. Finally, the servant returns and is like, Matt, the queen wants to see you. And Matt's like, great. You love to see it.
You know, ever have those days where you're like, this might as well happen?
He's like, okay, great. I can't keep the queen waiting, can I? And they're like, fine. Let him go. Teslin takes quite a while to let go. And then he leaves, and like as he looks over his shoulder, he sees them all go in separate directions. And he's like, ugh. Spooky. But as soon as they're alone, he says to the servant, like, good thinking. Thanks for getting me out of that. And she's like, oh no, the queen really does want to see you. And he's like, oh.
Pourquoi?
Why? Okay, fine. He is taken to a room where Tylin alone is. She's like, hello, Makathon. He's like, hi, your majesty. Oh, he greets her with a bow and saying, Majesty, it's like a pleasure to meet you, or whatever. Yeah. And she's like, oh, you speak the old tongue. And he's like, eh.
It's like, God fucking damn it.
Why does this happen?
What is wrong with me? Why can't I keep this under wraps?
Why does it do this? She's like, here you go. Here's a writing desk. I know you want to leave a message for Elaine and Nynaeve. He's like, thanks. Goes to write his message, which, in his own words, he thinks is very cordial, is pretty brisk,
Yeah.
really, and, you know, isn't very flowery.
Yeah, like it's brisk, a little abrupt.
He has bad handwriting.
Yeah, he has bad handwriting. Matt says, oh, this is pleasant enough.
Yeah.
We, the reader, are like, it could be better, but it's fairly neutral. So you know Nynaeve and Elaine are gonna have a fucking aneurysm over it.
Yes. How dare he speak to us in this way?
Yeah. Like, he has one line that's just like, be sensible.
Oh, going back to the Aes Sedai confrontation, he has quite a funny line. Not funny, but a sort of sweet line where the other Aes Sedai mention Nynaeve and Elaine, and Matt sort of automatically defends them.
Yeah.
And in his monologue is like, I will not just stand here and hear people talk shit about Nynaeve. I don't give a fuck about Elaine, but she's sort of wrapped up in it, so I guess I will defend her too.
Yeah. It's very cute.
Just Matt's loyalty generally to Nynaeve in particular, and Edwene is very sweet.
Yeah.
But Matt writes this note, seals it. He realizes, oh, I actually happen to have a signet ring. Looks at it for the first time. It's a little fox, apparently scaring two birds.
Yeah.
Later we'll find out those birds are ravens. So, symbolism. But he's like, cool. Marks the letter, turns around. Tylin's right there. And he's like, hello? Spooked? Excuse me, sorry. I'll just be leaving. She continues to stand very close to him in such a way that he cannot get past her without physically moving her. This is Tylin's favorite trick to pull. And she sort of starts monologuing about how he's Taviran and how she thinks Elaine and Nynaeve are kind of afraid of him. Which, you know, is probably accurate, but...
Yeah, she calls him an untamed rogue.
An untamed rogue.
And a gambler.
And I hear that you're good with women. Hint, hint, hint. And at some point in the middle of this, she starts touching his face. Like, at one point, outlining his lips.
Yeah.
Which, like, touching someone's cheek, an older woman touching a younger man's cheek could be construed as a maternal gesture. Yeah. But we immediately veer off of that path when she starts going near his lips. Obviously not great. Matt's sort of having an internal panic attack, trying to think of his way out of this situation. When abruptly Tylin backs off, the door opens, and her son Beslin walks in. And Matt's like, still just sort of standing there disheveled.
Yeah, bent over halfway probably.
Yeah, like,
backwards.
Hello? Beslin walks in and is like, yeah, I just got finished with a duel. I accidentally killed the guy. And Tylin's like, meh, shit happens. And Matt's like, hello?
Like, this whole family is off the rocker.
This whole city, but especially this family, need to calm down.
Yeah.
Beslin is meant to be about Matt's age, which, again, is troubling.
Yeah.
He is just sort of this young guy. Young dude. We'll find out more about him, I think, in further chapters.
Yeah, he sticks around.
Yeah, but Tylin's like, Beslin, this is Makathon, you guys should be friends and go out, drinking and carousing for Swoven Night, which is, I guess, the holiday that's taking place tonight.
Yeah.
And Matt, like, can't really get out of it, so eventually he finds himself roped into plans with Beslin. He's just like, okay.
Great. Now I have to go out with this dude.
Now I have this friend? I don't know what he is, but
Yeah.
his mom's super creepy to me, so I don't want to hang out with him.
Yeah.
But here we are. Of course, he's terrified that Beslin will find out that his mom is coming on to Matt, because Matt, in his patriarchal worldview, is like, it will be construed as the reversal of that.
Yeah, me coming on her.
Me coming on to her, especially to her son, who is, you know, in the man sense, overprotective of the women in his life.
Yeah.
Tylan would never do anything wrong, but Matt certainly could. Mm-hmm. So that's yet another layer of Matt's stress in this situation. But he leaves and returns to the Wandering Woman, the inn he's staying in. 3 of his guys, including Vannon, are like sitting around bandaging one of them up because he got into a duel. And Matt's like, I'm supposed to not know that they get in duels, as though anyone can take 3 steps in Abu Dar without getting in a duel.
Seriously?
Except Vannon, who everyone's afraid of, and Nalishan, who people just avoid.
Everyone's like, he's too sexy.
Yeah,
Simply too sexy to duel.
He's like, Vannon is pleased about it, though. Nalishan's like, duel me! Come on!
Let me fight you!
Come on! But
Like, no.
Matt's like, hey guys, guess what? Dark friends over by the Wet Cloak place. Vannon, can you keep an eye on it? And Vannon's like, yeah, I'll go take care of it, I guess. He's going up to his room. He passes one of the pretty serving maids, who I think, in sort of contrast, we are meant to see Matt's interaction with a serving girl who is recipient to his attention. You know, it's implied that either they have had sex or will have sex in the future. Mm-hmm. Matt's into her in that way, and she is,
Into him.
into him.
I mean, he's very cute. She's very cute.
But he asks her something. I can't remember what. Oh, she says, someone stopped in earlier and asked for a meal and, like, to be paid on your account, but Satalanan wouldn't give it to them,
Yeah,
so he
said
just went
was
away.
An illuminator.
An illuminator, which is unclear.
Yeah, I was like, what?
I know I have no clue who this person was.
Yeah.
Except maybe one of the dark friends who are now after Matt.
Yeah.
Who knows? Matt goes upstairs, and in one of the infamous, very good Matt action sequences where he's in a hallway.
Yeah.
He has lots of good hallway scenes, like Daredevil. Someone jumps out and attacks him, like, is choking him against the wall, and Matt finally gets a knife out and stabs him repeatedly. Stab, stab, stab. Through a door where he happens to find number 2 of this 2-person assassination team. Not assassination, I should say. The first guy had a cudgel, which is not necessarily a
murdery. It's not like he came out from, like, a gun.
Or a knife.
Or, yeah, it's not like I know guns don't exist,
Yeah.
but it's not like he was, like, immediately stabbed Matt, like, in the kidneys or something.
Yeah,
he was
like
trying to hit him over the head.
Yeah. And Matt walks in and sees this second guy bending over an empty chest. And I didn't connect these dots until I looked at the Wikipedia, but apparently the empty chest is where they would put Matt, like unto Rand.
Oh.
And it's unclear whether Matt understands that.
Yeah, I thought they were just trying to steal all his money.
That is what he tells Satal and Non
Yeah.
they were probably doing, but Matt himself doesn't say, like, they were definitely just after my money.
Yeah.
So, possible kidnapping attempt. By whom? Not sure. Perhaps any of the dark friends who we've just had the displeasure of being with.
Yeah.
We know it wasn't Jolene and Teslin, because we get their point of view after this. But there's a lot of things going on in Abu Dar, so
Yeah.
someone's out to kidnap Matt. We get introduced to Satal Anan and her husband, who are both delightful.
Yeah.
Matt talks about Satal Anan. He's like, she's really pretty, but, like, I can't think about her that way. She's just like
my mom. She's
like
not
my
like my
mom.
mom, but like
my
but
mom.
like my mom.
But like my mom, you know? You ever have those ladies who you just respect?
And it's like, you should have more of those,
Yeah, you should have more,
actually.
Matt, but I understand that you and Satal Anan have a cute
Yeah,
relationship.
cute relationship. And her husband is like a fishing captain. He's all like buff and scarred.
Yeah.
And Matt's like, he's pretty scary.
I'm terrified of him. I'm kind of terrified of both of them.
Yeah,
but
but they're like,
also, if
cute.
they invited me into a threesome, I would be like, yeah, sexy.
I'd say yes, too.
Matt kept on, just rolling through life. He's like, sorry, I killed these guys. Satalan, they were gonna rob me. And she's like, oh, that's weird. They came up here and specifically requested this room.
And Satalaton was like, that doesn't seem unusual.
Yep.
She'll learn, though. Everything's weird when Matt's
she's
around.
Like, God damn it, Matt.
Again, you killed another man in my inn.
God damn it, Matt. So we leave Matt standing over 2 corpses.
Also, his manservant comes up with a fucking frying pan.
Oh my god, that's actually adorable.
Yeah, and then
Narim
he tries
comes
to
up and
hide
is like
it.
trying to hide a frying pan, clearly having heard the commotion.
Yeah.
Come out probably while Matt was stabbing a guy to death and was like, oh my god, grabbed a frying pan and was like, I'll help.
Yeah, like Rapunzel and Tangled.
Yeah. And Matt is like, it's all good. And Narim's like, I wish you wouldn't get blood in your clothes. Which is like, Matt's like, he's so fucking mean.
Yeah.
And so morose. But it's like, he's expressing concern for you, Matt. He doesn't want you to bleed.
Way. Yeah, he's like, please stop bleeding on your clothes.
Again, the bizarre relationships between our main characters and their servants continues. But yeah, we leave Matt there, go over to Jolene and Teslin, who are having this debate. Teslin wants to just leave the palace, I think. She says, her argument is, listen, we're in the doghouse with Aleda, but we're never going to do what we were sent here to do, which is, I don't know what. I've already forgotten.
I mean, the best I've put together, like, between this and the few books after it, is Aleda sent them away just to make a point. She's like, I'm making a point that, because they were both sitters of their respective Ajas, Red and Green.
Yeah.
And she's trying to be like, if I can send the sitters away on a really shitty, dead-end, meaningless assignment, I would do it to anybody. So, like, I don't think Teslin and Jolene really have, like, an end goal, which is part of why they are so frustrated and upset, I believe.
Yeah, they're kind of, I think, just hoping eventually Aleda's gonna come around.
Yeah, eventually she'll call us back to the White Tower, and we'll have done our due diligence, and it, like, won't be a big deal anymore.
But Teslin's point here is that's never going to happen, so we might as well pack up Nynaeve, Elaine, and Matt Cathon, 3 people she desperately wants in her power.
Yeah.
Bring them to her, and great, we'll be, number 1 Aleda's boys.
Yeah, so they have a little argument.
Jolene's response is, well, we should just make Aleda wait. Mm-hmm. 2 can play at that game. Mm-hmm. Aleda's just a shitty leader, I think, is the undercurrent here.
Yeah, Jolene is like, I'm content to wait until Aleda is deposed, which I know she will be.
Yeah, because she fucking sucks.
Yeah.
So let's just wait it out.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot. Here's a fucking other weird mystery unsolved. Matt finds a piece of paper in his coat that is like, Elaine and Nynaeve are in danger. You need to remind them of that.
Yeah.
And Matt's like, who the hell?
I think it's revealed at the beginning of book 9, and I can't remember which one of the Aes Sedai it is, that she gets captured as a Dom.
Is it Teslin then?
I think it must be Teslin.
Teslin's the one who gets captured.
Yeah, not as an Adam, as a Damani. The Adam is the caller. Yeah. And I don't even remember why she says she did it. I'm sorry. I'm
unclear.
Really bad at plot points.
I'm amazed that you remembered that, because I went on Wikipedia, like, who'd this come from? And it basically was like,
Yeah, because Jolene is the one who ends up in the basement, right?
Yeah.
She tries to claim it was her. And Matt's like, Matt gives her a test, and she fails. So she knows he knows it's Teslin. So now he's like, fuck, I have to free Teslin.
Oh,
from the
right.
Shanshan.
Because Teslin tried to warn me.
Yeah, Teslin tried to warn me, so now I feel like I have an obligation to her, because Matt is a boy powered by obligation and gambling.
Boy, he sure is. Let's just slide in those twin batteries. Turn them on.
Like a wind-up toy.
Yeah, not sure why Teslin does this, and Matt himself is like, it can't have been Teslin and Jolene. They were the only 2 who really had the opportunity, what with all the coat grabbing, but I don't know why they would.
Yeah, I really can't remember. She gives some pretty thin excuse.
Especially because now we are hearing that Teslin is arguing in favor of kidnapping Nynaeve and Elaine and Matt. So it's possible she's just having that argument with Jolene to have the argument, so that Jolene has a reason to come up, have something to argue with. I don't know. I don't understand, and I don't know if I need to understand.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the Aes Sedai get stabbed in Camelin leads directly to Dumai's Wells path. Sometimes Robert Jordan just didn't know how to lead one plot point to another, so he manufactures it.
Yeah, you got the coat pole to the escape to the circus plot line.
Yep.
With half of Ebu Dar, it feels like.
It sure does. Anyway, we then switch over to these two Black Aja women who are in Ebu Dar on Moghedion's orders, looking for the same cache of magic items that Samael has sent Carradine and the others to look for.
Yeah.
So I don't know how fucking all the Forsaken know about this thing, but they're after it. Perhaps because they too did the dream need thing.
Dream need.
But the two, Phalion and Isban.
It bothers me that her name is Phalion, because I thought it was Fowlane for like half of the chapter, because I'm a dyslexic
No, it looks
idiot.
exactly the same.
And I was like, what is happening? Why
What's
is
she
Fowlane
doing
torturing people? Different woman completely.
Phalion, I guess, is like... apparently their methods have been to torture a bunch of the Ebu Dari wise women.
Yeah.
Which we will have cause to meet later. And Phalion tells us here that the wise women, are connected to women who have either been put out of the tower or who have some connection to channeling. Mm-hmm. So we already kind of got that brick in place for the coming plot. But Phalion's argument is this woman we just questioned left the White Tower and tried to steal some terangrial, which apparently 33% of women who leave the White Tower do, which is just kind of funny.
Bruh, I would too.
But Phalion's like, if this kleptomaniac didn't know where the fucking magic storehouse is, then no one will.
Yeah.
So what we have to do is forget about that assignment and go on to the next assignment, which is, we're gonna kidnap Elaine, Nynaeve, and Matt and bring them to Moghedien. So we have what is happening is there are a lot of like middle tier baddies here who are like, top tier doesn't know jack shit about what they're talking about. We're gonna refocus on Elaine, Nynaeve, and Matt. Mm-hmm. And somehow threaten them.
Yeah.
Which, great, Ebu Dar, as though it's not enough of a cesspit of threats already.
Seriously, like, you don't even need to have bad people here. Just have the dueling problem.
Yeah. Just have the dueling problem. It's huge. It's massive. But she sets about convincing the other woman that this is the correct route. Especially because they haven't heard from Moghedien in a while.
Because she's been enslaved.
But now she's out, baby. So who knows? Our very last point of view is from an unnamed man who is watching the same, like, White Cloak mansion. Wikipedia informs me that this is, in fact, Noel, Jane Forrest Strider. That's those two chapters?
That's those two chapters.
But thanks for listening. Thank you to Glenna McKenzie for our theme song, to our patrons on Patreon, and all our followers on social media. I believe we've hit a few mile marks in the last couple weeks. 800 followers on Insta.
800 followers on Instagram, which is really exciting.
And 1,000 more or less on Twitter.
Yeah, thanks.
Also great.
For listening to our dumb stuff.
Yeah. Next week, you can not look forward to being back with Rand, as we are introduced to Cadswan, a controversial figure. But you can look forward, unless there is some break in plans, to our good friend of the podcast, OG listener, and our I don't know how to define her in this way. She's like the one who got me into Wheel of Time. She's like our Wheel of Time daddy,
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell her that.
Kate, well, yeah, welcome Wheel of Time daddy, Cambria.
Cambria is going to be joining us. She's in town, and so we're gonna have her on to guest.
Yeah, and the sort of tracing things back in the way of Aes Sedai being murdered in an alley. I read Wheel of Time. We started this podcast because I was reading Wheel of Time to talk to Emily about Wheel of Time. She started reading Wheel of Time because Cambria read Wheel of Time. So there you go. Ipso facto, lorem ipsum, Cambria's the reason EHR exists.
Wheel of Time daddy.
Yeah, so it'll be fun. She's lovely and delightful, and I can't wait to have her opinions and thoughts on everything. Sorry, she has to talk about Cat Swan. I wish we could give her more fun chapters.
I need to text her the reading assignment.
All
right, DoorDash order is approaching. Do you have a sign off?
I don't.
It's totally fine. It's a
I'm
long,
sorry.
long fucking episode.
Yeah.
DoorDash order is approaching.
Gotta go eat Chinese
See y'all
food.
later.
Bye, 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 bye.